Hey guys, how's it going? Brandon from Singletons here. Today I've got a cool budget deck straight out of Commander 2021. Today we're talking about Octavia, Living Thesis. This is a tempo deck all about taking small, evasive creatures and making them huge so we can wipe out our opponents in just a few massive swings, while keeping up tons of removal and card draw. This is a fun deck with a super unique commander, and it's under $50. Our commander, Octavia, Living Thesis, is 8 blue for an 8/8 elemental octopus with 3 abilities. This spell costs 8 less to cast if you have 8 or more instants and or sorcery cards in your graveyard, Ward 8, and Magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, target creature has base power and toughness 8/8 until end of turn. So let's break that down real quick. The second ability, Ward 8, means that spells and abilities our opponents control that target Octavia are countered unless the controller pays 8 mana. So our commander basically has hexproof because no one's going to pay at least 8 mana to target it. Other than that, it costs less to cast if we've played a lot of instants and sorceries already, and it rewards us for playing more instants and sorceries once it's on the battlefield by making our other creatures bigger. So our best strategy is going to be playing lots of creatures and casting lots of spells, then our commander, then casting more spells to make our creatures big. To facilitate this, we're keeping our mana curve as low as possible and filling our deck with cards that draw us more cards, plus creatures that can't be blocked even after they've turned into 8/8s. So let's go ahead and go over all these creatures real quick. Ghoul Lurker, Mistcloaked Herald, Slitherblade, Triton Shorestalker, and Invisible Stalker can't be blocked at all, ever. So they're ideal to have out with Octavia, especially the Invisible Stalker because it also has hexproof. There aren't too many creatures that just straight up can't be blocked, so we have to rely on other types of evasion for our creatures, mostly flying, like the next creatures coming up. Fairy Seer scries 2 when it enters the battlefield, and Artificer's Assistant lets you scry whenever you cast a historic spell. Cloudfin Raptor has Evolve, so you put 1/1 counters on it whenever you play another creature with higher power or toughness. Fairy Vandal gets a counter each time you play your second spell per turn, which is super easy to do when our mana curve is so low. And Terramander has Adapt 4 to put 4 1/1 counters on it, which is an ability that costs less to cast if we have instants and sorceries in the graveyard. So this might be a good time to point out that Octavia's last ability changes the base power and toughness of the targeted creature to 8, so counters will still make the creature even bigger. Merfolk Windrobber will mill an opponent each time it deals combat damage, then can be sacrificed to draw a card after an opponent has 8 cards in their graveyard, and at 10 cards in the yard, Jace's Phantasm will get +4/+4, making it a 12/12 after Octavia's ability. Hypnotic Siren can be bestowed onto an opponent's creature to gain control of it, and Thieving Skydiver has a kicker ability that lets you take control of an opponent's artifact. Spectral Sailor and Ghostly Pilferer will both let us pay mana to draw cards. Siren Storm Tamer can counter a spell or ability that targets one of your creatures, and Thrumming Bird will let us proliferate whenever it deals combat damage to a player, meaning we can increase the number of counters on anything in the game. And then lastly, for the evasive creatures, Looter Ilkor has Shadow, so it can only be blocked by other creatures with Shadow, and it lets us draw a card, then discard a card whenever it damages an opponent. After all these creatures, we do still have 2 more in the deck, but they are strictly for card draw. Archmage Emeritus says that whenever we cast an instant or sorcery, we draw a card, and then Surikar Spellblade says that whenever we cast an instant or sorcery, put a charge counter on it, then when it deals combat damage to a player, draw cards equal to the number of charge counters on it. Speaking of drawing cards, let's go ahead and move on to the second biggest chunk of the deck, instants and sorceries that draw cards. So obviously drawing cards is going to be great anytime, but it's super important for us to have lots of cards in hand because we need a lot of creatures on board, we need a lot of answers to what's going on, and we need to be able to cast a lot of spells per turn to trigger all of our abilities, so we really need a lot of cards to fill up our hand. Starting off with cantrips, we have Ponder, Preordain, Serum Visions, Gitaxian Probe, Opt, and Thought Scour, which are all 1 mana spells that draw you a card, basically replacing themselves, and sometimes providing some other form of advantage too. Chart a Course and Winged Words will both draw you 2 cards. They're technically conditional effects, but you should easily meet those conditions in this deck. Careful Study and Frantic Search both draw you 2 cards and then have you discard 2 cards, great for trading in extra lands for better cards, plus Frantic Search untaps your land so you can cast more spells. Treasure Cruise is 8 mana to draw 3 cards, but it also has Delve, so you can exile spells from your graveyard to make it cast as low as a single mana. And Gush is 5 mana to draw 2 cards, but you can cast it for free by returning 2 of your islands to your hand. Factor Fiction is an instant for 4 mana that reveals the top 5 cards of your library and has an opponent split the cards into 2 piles. Then you choose which one pile to put into your hand. You'll usually get 2 to 3 cards off of this, but depending on the situation and the politics going on, you may be able to get 4 or even get an opponent to give you all 5. Good old Windfall has everyone discard their hand, then draw cards equal to the greatest number of cards discarded this way. Used correctly, you can completely refill your hand with this. Then finally, Reconnaissance Mission and Biden of Thassa are both enchantments that let you draw a card each time one of your creatures deals combat damage to an opponent. With how many creatures we have and how evasive they are, these both should draw us quite a few cards. If you can help it, make sure you have Ominous Seas on the board when you draw all these cards. It's a 2-mana enchantment that says whenever you draw a card, put a foreshadow counter on it, and then at any time you can remove 8 foreshadow counters from it to put an 8/8 Kraken creature token onto the board. Because, just drawing the cards isn't enough of a reward itself. So that's the core of the deck right there. Let's just quickly go over the utility cards. Soul Ring, Mind Stone, Prismatic Lens, Sky Diamond, Star Compass, and Heraldic Banner are our mana rocks to help ramp us. Plus, Mind Stone gives us the benefit of trading it in for a new card when we don't need it anymore, and Heraldic Banner pumps all of our blue creatures by +1/+0. And then High Tide is also a ramp spell because it doubles the mana that islands produce until the end of the turn. Rapid Hybridization, Reality Shift, and Raven Form are our single target creature removal spells. They all replace the creature they get rid of with a creature token, which is pretty unfortunate, but the creature that they get back is nowhere near going to be as good as the creature we got rid of, so they're really efficient spells, they're really good. Plus, Reality Shift and Raven Form actually exile the creature, which is amazing. As for board wipes, we don't really have access to many in Mono Blue, but we do have Engulf the Shore, Whelming Wave, and Spectral Deluge. Whelming Wave is 4 mana to return all creatures to their owner's hands except for Krakens, Leviathans, Octopuses, and Serpents, so it should hit most creatures, but we actually have some creatures of these types in our deck that are going to be safe from it, most notably our Octopus Commander. Engulf the Shore is also 4 mana to bounce all creatures with toughness less than or equal to the number of islands we have. Most of our lands are basic islands, so this should hit just about everything on the board. And then Spectral Deluge is 6 mana for the same effect, but it only bounces our opponent's creatures. Plus it has Foretell 3, meaning instead of paying 6 mana all at once, we can pay 2 mana on one turn to exile it face down, then on a later turn we can pay just 3 mana to actually cast it. Notorious Throng is a really neat spell. It's 4 mana to create a number of 1/1 flying creature tokens equal to the amount of damage we've dealt to our opponents this turn, or if we dealt any damage to a player with a rogue, which we have several of, we can pay 6 mana instead to also take an extra turn. For our counterspells, we have the OG counterspell, Negate, Dispel, Disdainful Stroke, Arcane Denial, Unified Will, Abjure, and Foil. The 2 spells of note here are Unified Will, which counters target spell as long as you control more creatures than the target spell's controller, and Foil, which counters target spell for free if you discard an island and another card for its casting cost. Both of these should be super easy to pull off as long as our deck is doing what it's supposed to be doing. Lastly, let's just go over the lands real quick. Blinkmoth Nexus and Fairy Conclave are both lands that can turn into flying creatures when we need extra attackers. Reliquary Tower says we have no maximum hand size, so we don't have to worry about drawing too many cards. And Mystic Sanctuary lets us take an instant or sorcery from our graveyard and put it back on top of the library for another go. That plus 26 basic islands makes for a pretty easy mana base. It's land light for sure, but with our low curve and high card draw, shouldn't be a problem. So that's the deck. That's everything from our $50 Octavia Living deck. As always, there's a link.
Small creatures with big impact. 8 power is so close to the magic number. I see potential here. Say, would you like to be part of something greater? Do you seek perfection in all things? Come with me. Let's turn this up to 10.
This strategy is begging for a slice of the Infect pie, and who am I to say no? Infect is a very unique mechanic that can be found on creatures from the plane of New Phyrexia, and it reads as follows. This creature deals damage to creatures in the form of -1/-1 counters, and to players in the form of poison counters. Poison counters are very interesting in that they don't do anything until a player has 10 of them. A player with 10 or more poison counters loses the game though, so take a cheap, weak creature with Infect and then use Octavia's ability to make it into an 8/8, which is dangerously close to one-shotting an opponent all by itself. The best and most dangerous of the bunch is Blighted Agent, a 2-mana 1/1 with Infect that can't be blocked. Ichor Clawmere and Necropede are also 2-mana 1/1s without evasion. Core Prowler is a 4-mana 2/2 that proliferates when it dies. Remember Proliferate from earlier? It's an ability that lets you increase the number of counters on anything in the game, including the poison counters on your opponents. Proliferating poison counters is actually a great way to grind out a win even when you can't attack, and Viral Drake is great at that. It's a 4 mana 1/4 with flying that lets you pay 4 mana to proliferate at any time, and if any of your infect threats get sent to the graveyard, Corpse Cur is a 4 mana 2/2 that lets you put one of those creatures back into your hand. Don't have any more creatures with infect? We have solutions for that. Grafted Exoskeleton is an equipment that gives the equipped creature +2/+2 in infect. A creature with this and Octavia's ability is an instant one-hit kill. Just don't expect to swap this around between several creatures though, because whenever it becomes unattached from a creature, you have to sacrifice that creature. Once you go infect, you don't go back. And if the best target on the board to be infected is one of your opponent's creatures, just use Corrupted Conscious, a 5 mana creature enchantment that says you control the enchanted creature and it gains infect.
Yes, I think that will do. That is all we need to get the point across. Now go. Spread our glorious message. Show the world perfection.
Whoa, don't know what happened there. Sorry about that. Thought I lost you for a minute. Everything just went out when I was trying... Are you feeling okay? Something about you just seems a little... different. I don't know. Anyway, so that's the entire Octavia Living Thesis deck for under $50. Just as a reminder, prices are pulled from tcgplayer.com using their cart optimizer tool and may include heavily played or damaged cards, and the budget does not include the commander, basic lands, or any shipping costs. If you'd like to see the deck list yourself, there's a link in the description. Check it out and let me know what you think. Tell me in the comments if there's anything in particular you do or don't agree with, and please consider subscribing if you'd like to know when more videos go up about Commander on a budget. Well, that's all for Singletons this time. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you all real soon.
Really soon.